Hey guys, Matt here and welcome to the next episode of the Game Gengo Vocab series, where we go and break down all of the Japanese that we come across as we play through a game. And the game that we're going to be looking at for this episode, as voted by the Game Gengo Discord community, is Ryoma Gotoku Ishin. Or as it's known in its English release title, Like a Dragon Ishin. This game has been incredibly requested on the channel to be covered in this vocab series. Actually, I think it's probably the one game that's been the most requested that I haven't yet covered, both from everyone's comments and upvotes on the videos themselves, as well as people voting for it in the Game Gengo Discord community. Think of this game as kind of like a Yakuza game set in the samurai Edo era of Japan. And it's really quite cool, as this game is actually set in Kyoto, the city that I live in. Not only that, but it also uses real life historical figures. However, the Yakuza characters are kind of taking on their role. Like, for example, the main character from the Yakuza series, he's actually playing Sakamoto Ryoma, a very famous, probably one of the most famous figures actually in Japanese history. A lot of Japanese people learn about this guy, as he's actually one of the important figures that led to the eventual change of Japanese society from the kind of Edo era samurai days to a little bit more westernized Meiji era, where the country of Japan went through huge changes and kind of we saw the end of the samurai. In this video, we're going to be covering 41 pieces of N5, 20 pieces of N4, 38 pieces of N3, 10 N2, and 18 pieces of N1 vocabulary, as well as 113 pieces of vocabulary beyond the JLPT. So in this video alone, we're going to be covering 125 new pieces of vocabulary, even if you've seen every single video in this playlist. We're really starting to make some progress now. We're so close to 50% of both the N5 and the N4 vocab covered, 34% of the N3, 2, and both 10% for the N2 and the N1. So we have a very interesting, historically packed episode this time, so without further ado, let's jump right into it. So starting things off, we have this rather difficult piece of Japanese here with the font here, right, with the handwritten Japanese. And here at the very top, we have Keo. And as we can see, this is actually the name of the final era of the Edo period. This was just before the Meiji Restoration happened. So the Keo era here is from 1865 to 1868, and this is pretty much when the whole samurai thing ended. Rather than like a military leader, a shogun or a shogun, you might have heard in English, for example. Instead of that, during this era is when the imperial family rose back to power. This is when the capital city of Japan at the time, in the samurai era, Edo, was renamed to Tokyo. So there's a lot of change that happens in this era. Sannen is just 3 years, so it's the third year of the Keo era. And there are only 4 years in this era, so it's definitely near the end. Next we have Juichi Gatsu. So Juichi just means 11, and then Gatsu is for a month. Here, the 11th month, November. And then finally we have Jugonichi. So this just means the 15th day. So it's the 15th of November in year 3 of the Keo era. We have these very strong looking samurai rushing through the street. This is actually the Shinsengumi, if you've heard of them before. If you've seen anything like Rurouni Kenshin or something, you've probably heard of them already. If not, you'll learn all about them in this game. They're actually one of the main characters. And here, perhaps the leader, as he's opening the door, he says, "Ikude." So starting things off immediately here with some Kansai Ben, some Kansai dialect from the Kansai region, which is Kyoto and Osaka and things like that. As this game is based in Kyoto, you're going to be coming across a lot of this type of language right here. So Iku just means to go, we've seen that plenty enough in this series, but the de, this is a little bit more tricky. And this is the replacement for yo in Kansai Ben. As we can see here explained in Japanese, de is the Kansai replacement for yo, the emphatic particle at the end of sentences. So instead of things like da yo, the yo would be de. And as we'll see a little bit later, instead of the da, it will actually have ya. So here, ikuyo in Kansai Ben is ikude.
行くで。
So as they burst through the doors, a voice screams out, "Uchiiri ka!" Uchiiri here is another new piece of language, and this means a raid, right? And as we can very much see, there is a raid going on, right? A kind of surprise attack into something. Here we can see that it's top 27,000 useful words in anime, drama, and 20,000 in news. So it's not ridiculously rare, but it's not ridiculously essential either. Just so you guys know, I am using Lorenzi's Jisho, link in the description. This is the dictionary that I'm using, as it has a kind of ranking of the usefulness and the frequency of pieces of language, where you're going to see them more likely. I think this is something that's really useful for language learners to actually see contextually how important a piece of language is. So that's why I'm using this dictionary here in this video. Ka is just a question. So, is this a raid, huh? And they continue to yell, "Shinsengumi ka!" And so as I mentioned, here is the word for the Shinsengumi. This was kind of a police force in the Edo era, as we can see, that's dedicated to suppressing anti-shogunate activities. And if you remember, the shogun, very much a military government, right? The samurai, the head of the samurai is the shogun. These guys were kind of like the police for any kind of activity that was against the shogun. Absolutely a useful piece of vocabulary if you're at all interested in Japanese history. You're definitely likely to see this word used in things like anime and manga and all kinds of stuff. Anything really to do with samurai often have stories revolving around the Shinsengumi. And again, ka, question. So, is that the Shinsengumi? Shinsengumi ka! So the first line he says here, "Gyosan oru na." Gyosan is a new piece of language here, and this is also kind of a dialectal word for meaning takusan, many, a lot. As we can see, it's the top 11,000, so a bit more rarer. Gyosan oru. Oru is actually the replacement for iru, for animate objects, living things to exist. So like to be. So takusan iru, there are many people. Here in Kansai dialect is gyosan oru. Now, oru, as we can see in this explanation, is actually a piece of kind of humble language, but in the Kansai region, this isn't being used in a humble way. This is just Kansai dialect for iru. And just so you know, Kansai dialect is very widely used even today, so it's not just a samurai way of speaking. This is very, very, very common, this oru instead of iru. For example, if you come to Kyoto or Osaka, someone might say, instead of benkyou shiteiru, studying, they might say benkyou shitoru. It means the same thing. Shiteiru turns into shitoru. And then it finishes off with na, and this is kind of like a Kansai Ben way of saying ne. So instead of saying takusan iru ne, he's saying gyosan oru na. There are many people here. Here he says abare gai ga aru. Abare comes from abareru here, to kind of act violently, to rage. So normally kai ga aru is an N2 piece of grammar meaning that it's worth doing something, but it's connected here with abareru, here in the must stem. So abare gai ga aru. So it kind of bleeds together the sounds. Abare gai ga aru. It's worth kind of raging on in this way. Te mon ya de, and this te mon is actually short for toyu mono. So te is quoting something, and it's the abbreviated version of toyu, and then mon is the casual colloquial way of saying mono. So toyu mono, temon. And as we can see in the Japanese definition, it just means that you really think something is a certain way. So here he really thinks that it's worth kind of raging on here, because there's lots of people. And this sentence, instead of ending with da, as I said previously, ends with ya, the Kansai dialect way of saying da. So here, ya de is da yo. We already seen de in the previous example with iku de. So this whole sentence here in a more standard Japanese would be takusan iru ne. Abare kai ga aru toyu mono da yo. There's lots of guys here, so it's definitely worth raging on, going crazy. And then the other guy yells, "Yoke na oshaberi wa e." So yoke na is a na adjective to say to do something too much, and yoke na oshaberi. This is a new piece of N3 vocabulary meaning some sort of talk or some sort of chit-chat. Shaberu is just the verb to talk, but oshaberi is kind of turning it into a noun. So very much how the verb to say to talk would be shaberu, the noun for talking, chit-chat or gossip is oshaberi. So yoke na oshaberi, so needless talk wa, as for needless talk, And here's another piece of Kansai dialect. Is in Kansai Ben, for good. So in the same way that you would use to say something's good, in Kansai dialect you can use So instead of ne, you could say na. Or instead of o, it's okay, you could say de. So already we're learning some very fundamental pieces of the Kansai dialect. Majime ni yareya. Majime is something we've seen quite a lot already. This just means to do something seriously, earnestly, or kind of properly. Ni yare. Yare is the imperative form of yaru, to do. So do it seriously, do it properly. Majime ni yare. And then we have ya. Do it properly. So all of this language we've already covered in previous episodes. Koko wa, as for here, watashi tachi ni. So watashi tachi, us, ni, to. This marks the direction of an action. So kind of doing an action to us. Makaseru here is to leave or to entrust something. So leave in the direction of us, right? Leave it to us. So as for here, leave it to us. Koko wa watashi tachi ni makasete. Kimi wa, as for you, ike, go. So as for here, leave it to us. You, go. Koko wa watashi tachi ni makasete. Kimi wa ike. And here we have some new pieces of language. So first is the name of the main character that I told you previously. Sakamoto Ryoma. So as you can see, he's certainly a very famous person in Japanese history, as he even has his own picture on Wikipedia. So he's definitely a very important person in the history of Japan, as we can see, an influential figure of the Bakumatsu and establishment of the Empire of Japan in the late Edo era. So that guy right there is the main character, who's also being played as the main character from Yakuza. So Sakamoto Ryoma wa, as for Sakamoto Ryoma, ue no kaiya. Ue just means above. Kai is the word for a story or a floor in a building. So ue no kai means the above floor or the floor above. So as for you, ue no kaiya, the floor above. And then again, ya for da. So you go to the floor above. Sakamoto Ryoma, ue no kaiya. Now outside we have these two shady looking figures, one of them smoking this old school badass long pipe. The guy says, Hajimatta ka. So Hajimaru is something we see all over the place. This just means it has begun. Hajimeru would be that you're beginning something, but Hajimaru means it has begun in kind of a little bit more of a passive way. And again, ka, huh. So, it's begun, huh? Hajimatta ka. Yeah. Oh, so cool. So rushing up the stairs and kind of dodging the bullets and slashing the guy, and as he gets slashed he says, Darezeo. Dare is pretty straightforward, just who, but then we have this interesting piece of language, Zeo. And this is bound to trip up a lot of people. I would expect that maybe something like 99% of people watching this video don't know what this means. This is actually Tosa Ben, dialect from the Tosa region. One really nifty way of finding out if something actually is like one of these kind of dialects is just write the piece of language in Google, like I have here, Zeo, and then follow with Hogen. This is the Japanese word for a dialect. So Zeo Hogen, and you come up with this nice little result right here. So we can see that Zeo is actually Dayo in more standard Japanese. So we're now learning dialect from two different regions, the Kansai region like Kyoto and the Tosa region, which is kind of like southeastern Shikoku, an island way below the Kyoto region. That's actually where Sakamoto Ryoma comes from. So you're going to see these two dialects in this game quite a bit, both the Kansai dialect and the Tosa dialect. And if you just quickly have a look at this chart, there's some other language we'll see a little bit more. Cha can mean dayo, chu can mean teiru, and nya can mean ne. So that's really interesting actually. The nya that you often hear cats talk is actually Tosa ben for ne. That's interesting. I wonder if there's a lot of cats in the Tosa region or something like that. That's super interesting. I didn't know that. And as he backs away, he says, Oman wa? So Oman is another dialect way of saying anata, or even omae. So all of this just means you. So Oman, you can kind of look at this more archaic, older way of saying you. Oman wa? As for you? So kind of like, who are you? Oman wa? Okay, all sorts of things are going on now. We seem to have walked into something. So the guy falls to his death. There's a guy that kind of looks shot or stabbed in the corner. And then we hear a voice from our left that says, Fushigi na hanashi mo atta mon ya na. And we've actually seen all of this language in previous episodes, so let's just go through it really quickly. Fushigina means mysterious. Hanashi is like a story or a conversation. Mo also, so even kind of odd, mysterious conversations. Atta, there were, monyana, and this is the same as mono dana. And monoda can be used to express strong feelings and surprise. As we can see here in this Japanese definition, it means something like hontou ni dun 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 dana. It really is that way, huh? Like for example, kodomo no seichou wa hayai mono da. Children's growth really is fast, huh? That's the same meaning as kodomo no seichou wa hontou ni hayai na. So it's like in English saying something really is dun dun dun, huh? Used to show some sort of strong feelings or perhaps some sort of surprise at something. He's saying this really is quite a mysterious or strange story, huh? 不思議な話もあったもんやな。不思議な話もあったもんやな。時代を動かすはずの男が時代遅れの男に切られ死ぬ。Here a bit longer of a sentence, so 時代を動かすはずの男が So 時代 just means the period or the times 時代を動かす And we can see that 動かす just means to move or here to kind of to change, to alter So to move the times in a way kind of moving the times forward to the era 時代を動かすはず kind of expected or to expect のotoko, the guy or the man. So all of this is modifying otoko. 時代を動かすはずの男. The guy who is expected to move or change the times. Ga. This is the subject marker, so we know that the person marked by the ga particle is going to be doing the following part of the sentence. So the guy who is supposed to have moved the era. And then we have the following part. 時代遅れの男に切られ死ぬ. And jidai okure just means to kind of be out of fashion, to be outdated, that type of thing. Jidai, the times, the era, and okure is to kind of be too late. So something that's kind of out of the times, behind the times, that type of thing. Jidai okure no otoko, so a guy who is behind the times, ni, by that guy, kirare, that means to be cut down. Here to kill a human using a blade, right? So to be cut down by the guy that's behind the times, shinu. And that just means to die. So the guy that was supposed to move the era forward ends up being cut down by a guy who's behind the times. So perhaps this is talking about maybe they were a little bit more revolutionary figures trying to change things and the samurai cut them down, right? Perhaps that's what he's talking about here because I assume that he's talking about this guy that's dead on the screen. So the guy that was cut down here, right? Apparently he was supposed to have brought some sort of change to the country, but he ends up getting killed by just a normal samurai.
時代を動かすはずの男が時代遅れの男に切られ死ぬ。しかもこの世に存在しないはずの
So we actually know all the language in this sentence. Shikamo, this just means moreover. Kono, this. Yo is like a world, so in this world. Sonzai shinai means to not exist. Hazu again means that something's expected to be the case. No, so moreover, someone or something who's not supposed to exist in this world.
しかもこの世に存在しないはずのもう一人の自分に切られることになるんやからな。
And then he continues on with もう一人の自分に. もう一人 just means one other person. の自分, this means oneself. So oneself who there is another of, に by that person, 切られる to be cut down, ことになる. And koto ni naru is just an N4 piece of language for something to kind of end up a certain way, to be the result, to be the outcome. So for it to end up being cut down, and then he finishes that off with n yakara na. So n ya is the same as n da, no da, explaining. So this is the explanatory language right here. N ya, no da, same meaning. So koto ni narunda, it is that, it'll end up in that way. Kara, because, and then na, right? So saying that it's very strange to be cut down by someone who's not even supposed to exist, and in a way, someone who also kind of has a second life, right? Mo hitori no jibun, there's another one of you, that type of thing. Which is a very similar sentiment here in the English version, taking the life of a man who's had two of them.
しかもこの世に存在しないはずのもう一人の自分に切られることになるんやからな。なあ。坂本龍馬さんよ。
維新の英雄坂本龍馬の暗殺よりわずか数年前。
Okay, so a little bit spoilerific, because this is set on actual Japanese history, there are some events that are kind of public knowledge to most people in Japan, so this is a bit of a spoiler if you're not familiar with Japanese history. Let's have a look. So we actually have a lot of new language here in this sentence. Ishin no eiyu. And this Ishin here is actually the Ishin from the title of this game, Ryuga Gotoku Ishin. Like a dragon Ishin, but this Ishin actually means some sort of revolution, reformation, restoration. This is the word used in the Meiji Restoration, Meiji Ishin. So here this revolution no eiyu, this is an N1 piece of language meaning a hero. You may have seen this if you've seen my Final Fantasy VII Remake series. I believe this word is used quite a lot. So Ishin no eiyu means the hero of the restoration or the revolutionary hero. Sakamoto Ryoma no, so Sakamoto Ryoma's ansatsu. Spoilers! He dies! Ansatsu is the Japanese word for an assassination. So, right, for example, like the JFK assassinations, this is the word you would use, ansatsu. So, Sakamoto Ryoma no ansatsu, the assassination of Ryoma Sakamoto, yori, so like from or out of. So from the assassination of Sakamoto Ryoma, wazuka, just a little bit, sunen mae, a few years ago. So a few years from the assassination of the revolutionary hero Sakamoto Ryoma.
維新の英雄坂本龍馬の暗殺よりわずか数年前、この国は徳川幕府による絶対的な支配が300年にわたって続いていた。
So now we're getting a little bit of a history lesson. So a few years before the assassination of Sakamoto Ryoma, この国は, so この国, this country, wa, as for this country, Tokugawa Bakufu ni yoru. And so you know how I mentioned that we're getting very near the end of the samurai era, and the guy who rules it is the shogun, well the guy who was in charge, Tokugawa. So Tokugawa shogunate just means the kind of government or the kind of ruling under Tokugawa. Bakufu just kind of means the area of domain under the Tokugawa. Tokugawa Bakufu ni yoru, by means of, so by means of the Tokugawa shogunate, zettai teki na shihai ga 300年にわたって続いていた. So we have a few new pieces of language. Zettai teki means absolute. Zettai just means absolutely, right? Zettai ni. But teki is turning it into kind of na adjective. So zettai teki na, so an absolute shihai. And this is the rule of something, right? The complete domination control of something. Like how the Empire takes over in Star Wars, that would be shihai, right? The complete rule of something. So an absolute rule, zettai teki na shihai ga 300年, 300 years, ni watatte. This is an N2 piece of grammar meaning throughout a period, like over a period of time. So over the period of 300 years, 続いていた. It continued. So as for this country, by the Tokugawa shogunate, absolute rule continued for over 300 years. So this period was actually quite a decent period of stability in terms of Japanese history because of the fact that it actually finally had a ruler rather than all these clans trying to fight against each other. It wasn't necessarily the most safest time, but it did have some level of kind of stability to it. And this is the final ruler of the kind of samurai era Japan, the Tokugawa shogunate.
この国は徳川幕府による絶対的な支配が300年にわたって続いていた。だが、静寂は突如現れた異国の黒船によって打ち破られる。
だが、however, 静寂は as for that silence, or as for that kind of stillness, as I said, he ruled very, very strongly for 300 years, so it was actually a period of relative stability, especially considering how crazy things were beforehand. So that here, that stability, that stillness, that silence is expressed here with seijaku. Seijaku wa, so as for that stillness, totsujo, this means all of a sudden. So all of a sudden, arawareta. We've seen this so many times, this means it appears, like a Pokemon appears, right? So it appeared, something appeared all of a sudden, totsujo arawareta. And then we have these things that are in the background, ikoku no kurofune. So ikoku here is the word for a foreign country, right? Just a country that's not Japan. The I is kind of expressing different, and then koku for a country, so like a different country, right? A foreign country. Ikoku no kurofune, the black ships. So this is a very significant event in Japanese history when the black ships, as they were referred to, these ships that came to Japan during the 16th and 19th centuries, especially those of the Perry expedition. And so this is very much talking about kind of the West trying to push itself into Japan. At the time, Japan for a very long time was actually kind of a closed off country. Long history. There was sometimes trade was allowed, sometimes it wasn't. But for a very long time, Japan was an isolated country. And there was a point in history when the rest of the world just said, no, we've had enough. We're getting trade. We're getting business. We're gonna force our way in. And that was very much symbolized here with these black ships. And this is kind of funny, but if we have a look at definition number 2, apparently this can also be used as a foreign disruptor of the Japanese market, referring to a product arriving from the West and disturbing the Japanese market, much like the black ships very much disturbed Japanese society as a whole, you know. This was when Japan was going through this huge period of change, going from, you know, the sword to the gun and all that kind of stuff. If you've seen, for example, The Last Samurai, this is kind of around that, you know, that period, right, where the West was really trying to push itself into Japan, forcing trade and things like that. Niyotte, we know means by, so by the foreign black ships, uchi yaburareru. So to be broken or to be smashed or to be defeated by those black ships. So that stillness in Japanese society was absolutely, you know, upturned by the arrival of the black ships.
だが、静寂は突如現れた異国の黒船によって打ち破られる。強大な文明力を持った異国に対し。
And we have a few new pieces of language here as well. So 強大な文明力を持った異国に対し。So 強大な。This means a mighty or a powerful. 強大な文明力. And so bunme is a new piece of language here, and this means a civilization, a piece of language here at the end 3. Bunme ryoku means the power of civilization, so the power of a great civilization, right? Kyodai na bunme ryoku or motta. Motta just means to hold or to possess, so possessing what's marked by the ot particle. Possessing the powerful civilizational power, ikoku, so the foreign country that possesses this great civilizational power, ni taishi. And this is an N3 piece of language to mean towards or against. So against this foreign country that possesses great civilizational strength.
強大な文明力を持った異国に対し、幕府は抗う術を持たなかったのである。
And so surprisingly, we actually know most of this language. 幕府は抗う術を抗う, we've seen in previous videos meaning to go against, and then we have this new piece of language, 術. This means the way, means, or method of doing something. So the way or means to 抗う, stand up against, go against. So as for the bakufu, means of standing against these ships, を持たなかったのである. So 持たなかった, they didn't possess のである. And this is the same as のだ or のです. But this is more of a kind of literary way of talking, almost like, here speaking the histories. You'll often see it being used in this kind of context. It's a little bit more formal as well. So this just means to be. So the Bakufu didn't have any means to stand up against these ships.
強大な文明力を持った異国に対し、幕府は抗う術を持たなかったのである。その支配者の衰えを時の侍たちが黙って見逃すはずがなかった。
And we have a whole bunch of language here that's new. So その支配者, その that 支配者, a governor or a ruler の衰えを. And this piece of language is pretty rare, otoroe. My god, this means a weakening, an emancipation, or a decline. And you can see in anime and drama, top 32,000. So a very difficult piece of language, this otoroe. The verb version is actually in the N1 level, so otoroeru, to kind of to decline. And then the bottom line, Toki no samurai tachi ga damatte minogasu hazu ga nakata. So Toki no just means at that time, Toki no samurai tachi, and samurai is a samurai, just the Japanese pronunciation. So samurai tachi, the samurai, so the plural of that time, Toki no samurai tachi ga. So the samurai of that time are doing an action, damatte. This means to remain silent, say nothing, remain silent. So the samurai of that time remains silent, damatte, minogasu. This means to overlook or to kind of almost miss the opportunity, to pass up an opportunity of something. So the samurai remain quiet and overlook this opportunity, hazu ga nakata. And hazu ga nai is just an N4 piece of language to mean that it cannot be that way. We've already actually seen hazu to kind of expect something to be a certain way. Hazu ga nai means that there is no way that you could expect it to be that way, right? It's not expected to be that way. It's highly unlikely, it's impossible, it cannot be in that way. So there's no way that the samurai at that time would have shut up and remained quiet and missed the opportunity. What opportunity? That's marked in the first sentence with the ot particle. The decline of that ruler, the shogunate, right? So their power is declining, these black ships come in, there's no way that the samurai at that time were going to overlook that weakening of power, and so they jumped on the chance to change Japan. Learning history with Game Gengo! That was really cool, I love that. I wish we could all just learn history and stuff like that through things like media, like video games and manga and stuff. I think it's the coolest way to learn history. It's so interesting.
その支配者の衰えを時の侍たちが黙って見逃すはずがなかった。無力な支配者に従う理由はない。
And some more new language. 無力な支配者に従う理由はない. Muryoku is pretty straightforward. Mu just means none, ryoku, power, so powerless. Muryoku na shihaisha, we know that means the rulers, so rulers who have no power. Muryoku na shihaisha ni shitagao, and shitagao just means to obey something, like a rule, order, law, custom, that type of thing. So to obey a ruler that has no power, ryu wa nai. And Ryu here just means a reason. Wa nai, there isn't. So there's no reason to serve a ruler who's powerless. Because the whole point of it being a ruler is that they're ruling through power. So if your ruler is powerless, then hey, now's the time for an uprising. Just a quick thing about this ni particle. I find it really useful to remember that this is the particle that marks the direction of action. So it shows what direction the action is actually happening in. So for example, shihaisha ni shitagao, so you're obeying in the direction of those rulers, right? It actually does work quite a lot when you look at grammatical use of this ni particle. It often actually is just simply showing the direction of action. How you translate it can be a lot more complicated, but at the core function, that's all it's really doing.
無力な支配者に従う理由はない。日本は再び群雄割拠の乱世に飲み込まれようとしていた。
And then a bit of difficult language here. So, Nihon wa, as for Japan, futatabi, this means once again. And then this very difficult language right here. Gunyu kakkyo, a super duper rare piece of language in the top 50,000 anime and drama. You'll never see this language again, ever again. But this means a rivalry of local warlords. So, you know, very much in the kind of samurai era that you're going to see this piece of language used. Apparently it's used as a yoji jukugo as well, right? So 4 kanji put together that means some sort of phrase, and that's also a number of powerful people standing by themselves in a given field. I can't say I've really seen that used too much, but hey, perhaps you have. It is top 21,000 in use. Pretty rare, but still. So as for Japan, once again, Gunyu kakkyo no ransei ni. Ransei is just the troubled times, the turbulent times. So the turbulent times of these, you know, warlords fighting against each other. Once again, Japan will nomikomareyo to shiteita. Now, nomikomu is an N1 piece of language to be engulfed in something. Literally, nomu is to drink or to kind of swallow, and komu is to kind of go in. So to be swallowed in, as we can see, to be swallowed in, to be swallowed up, to be engulfed, to be filled with, to be gulped down, that type of thing, right? And we're talking about Japan, but the piece of grammar at the end here is yo to shiteita. And this is an N3 piece of language that often means to try to or to attempt to, but in this situation it's more like it's about to be. As we can see in definition number 1 in the Japanese explanation, that someone is trying to do something and then you're in the state just before that's about to happen. So Japan is once again about to be engulfed in these kind of war between all of these clans once more.
日本は再び群雄割拠の乱世に飲み込まれようとしていた。
So written in big calligraphy here in Japanese, we have Daisho. So we can barely read it here in the, you know, Japanese style writing, but what's written right here in blue is Daisho chapter number 1. Dai just means kind of number, it's almost like a hashtag, and then Isho 1 chapter. Don't worry about the ranking on this word in particular. It says it's in the top 82,000, but I would say this is much more common than that, as this is pretty much in every single book in existence. Chapter 1, so it's a very essential piece of language. Then we have two more pieces of language that are significantly less useful. Now, Tosa is the name of the prefecture here, which is a former province that is now located in present-day Kochi. As I mentioned before, there is this big island called Shikoku, and this is to the south of places like Okayama and Hiroshima and Kobe and things like that. So this island here, we can see at the very bottom, here is where Tosa Han used to be. So this is kind of the feudal province of Tosa. And this is where the main character Ryoma Sakamoto comes from. And here we have a rather rare piece of language here. To become a lordless samurai is seen here as Dappan. Now, the Han is actually for the province. You'll see this word quite a lot in this game. Datsu, the da is almost like getting out of, right? So getting out of being a part of this province, right? Getting out of having a master, that type of thing. It's all kind of connected in that way. So becoming a lordless samurai. And I feel like this dictionary definition explains it best here in the Japanese definition, where we can see that it was used in the Edo Jidai, the Edo era, where a samurai leaves their fiefdom, their province that they're kind of owned to, and they become a vagabond. So, you know, that kind of wandering samurai type thing. So this title is very much Chapter 1, leaving Tosa and becoming a vagabond, almost, right? That type of thing. Ichinenburi no Tosa da. So Ryoma has arrived here by boat, and he thinks to himself, Ichinenburi no Tosa da. So Ichinen, 1 year. Buri is kind of like for the first time in a while. This is the same buri in Hisashiburi, right? So here it's for the first time in a year. Ichinen buri no Tosa. So he's kind of saying that it's like been a year since he's last been here in Tosa. Ichinen buri no Tosa da. Now, one really cool thing about this game is because there's a lot of like historical terms that the average person probably isn't likely to actually know, even Japanese people, they have this cool little button here that you can actually use to have a look at a dictionary for certain words. And so here, highlighted in green is Tosa, and let's say, for example, you don't know what Tosa is, you can press the options button and it gives you a little like kind of written description of what Tosa is. As you can see, it says here that it's a place to the south of Shikoku, just like I said previously. 1年ぶりの土佐だ。みんな元気にしてるだろうか? And then he thinks to himself, みんな元気にしてるだろうか? And we actually know all of the language in this sentence, so みんな, everyone, 元気にしてる, this just means to be genki, to be well, to be lively, so to be well, だろうか, I wonder if perhaps, so I wonder if everyone's been well. みんな元気にしてるだろうか? ちょっと街の様子でも見に行くか? So ちょっと just means a little bit. Machi is the town, no 様子. This is kind of like the appearance, the state, the conditions, so kind of how town is. Demo, even, something like 見に行くか. So 見に行く just means to go to look, and then ka is kind of like a question that he's asking himself. So he's kind of like, well, I guess I'll check out how town is for a little bit. ちょっと街の様子でも見に行くか?
いやー、絶景じゃのう。あ、坂
本さん、こんにちは。
わしらは黙ってお国のために働くだけ。昨日は関東にそうやろ。よいしょ、よいしょ。よいしょ。よいしょ、よいしょ。
おつ、どうしたの？おつ。
Okay, so as we're walking down the street, we come across this mother and child, and the child seems to be in some sort of pain, and the mother says, おつ、どうしたの？おつ. So Otsu is actually the child's name. This might actually be a nod to the famous character Otsu from the story of Miyamoto Musashi. Very, very famous character here for anyone who knows about the story of Miyamoto Musashi. She's kind of like the main love interest from that story, both in the novels, which were made in, I think, the 40s. I can't remember when the novels were written, as well as the manga series that was made more recently with this incredible art style. Highly recommended manga read. And as you can see, she almost looks like she's wearing the same kimono. It's quite funny. So this may be a nod, maybe not, maybe not, maybe it might just be a name that's more common there. Not so common a name now, but definitely very fitting here for the samurai era. So Otsu, doshitano? And doshitano is like, what happened? What's wrong?
Otsu, doshitano? Otsu! Dareka! Dareka! Oisha-sama wa imasen ka?
And then she continues with Dareka, oisha-sama wa imasen ka? So Dareka just means somebody. We've seen this plenty enough. First she says it in hiragana, then she says it in kanji. Perhaps this is expressing that the first time she says it is being a little bit more emotional and emphatic, whereas the second time she says it a little bit more clearer. Perhaps that's what it's expressing here. There's lots of different nuance when you actually choose how exactly words are written and how the actual feeling is portrayed in how someone says something. Perhaps that's what's happening here because she does say the same word twice, but it's written differently each time. However, she's never too busy to use honorific keg or speech. Here she asks for a doctor, and instead of just saying isha, which is the normal word for a doctor, she says oisha-sama. So she's speaking in a very honorific language here, very respectful to someone, so, you know, talking about some sort of doctor somewhere and still showing respect to them, even if she hasn't seen them yet. Oisha-sama wa imasen ka? Imasen is just inai, to not exist, and then ka, a question. So, someone, isn't there a doctor?
Dareka! Dareka! Oisha-sama wa imasen ka?
どういたがぜよ。わしは医者じゃ。見してみ。
Doitagazeo. So as we can see, more of this Tosa dialect, and we're going to be seeing that a lot more now as we're actually in Tosa. So doita is actually Tosa ben for doshita, as like we have in the example up above, right? Doita monde is the same as doshita koto da. So definitely reading up on some Tosa ben could help you, at least for the first section of this game, and then reading up on Kansai ben will help you a lot for the latter half, or the biggest part of the game actually, pretty much every part after this. This ga is really difficult in Tosa ben, so if you have a look here in the Japanese definition, ga in Tosa ben can be used in the middle of a sentence to kind of point to a person or a thing, or it can also be a way of kind of ending a sentence in an interrogative way, in a questioning way. Ze is actually like da, so zeyo is like dayo, so perhaps it's kind of like the n in standard Japanese, right? Like doshitanda. Doitagazeo. Tosa ben, man. Difficult stuff. Good news is you're probably never actually going to need to actually speak this stuff. Very interesting. I love learning about all these kind of dialects and stuff. It's so interesting, but it does make it quite difficult sometimes to actually look these things up. Sometimes it's really clear, like Kansai ben, I live in Kansai, I got you back, super easy. Kansai ben, I totally understand that. But some of this stuff gets really difficult, especially, for example, Tosa ben. Tosa isn't even really a place nowadays. It's kind of an older province. Like, it is technically still existing, but it's not the same that it used to be. It used to actually be a province in a much larger place. This dialect is definitely not used as much as like something like Kansai ben, which is super common. Whew, tricky stuff. But have a look at these example sentences and perhaps maybe it can help you get a feel for it. But it definitely seems to be pointing at either a person, a thing, or asking some sort of question. Washi is normally a male language used by more elderly people referring to themselves. Washi wa, as for me, isha ja. So isha is a doctor. We can actually see in the note here, usually used as oisha-san in polite speech. So there you go. Isha ja, ja is just kind of an old man way of saying da. So washi wa isha da. I am a doctor. Washi wa isha ja. Just an old way of talking. And then he says, mishite mi. And this is just kind of like, give me a look. So what's wrong? I'm a doctor. Give me a look.
どういたがぜよ。わしは医者じゃ。見してみ。
つい先ほどから急に腹を押さえて苦しみ出して。
Tsui sakihodo kara. Tsui means just. Sakihodo is a short while ago. So just some time ago or just recently. Tsui sakihodo kara. And this just means since. So since just a little while ago. Kyū ni hara o osaete kurushimi dashite. Kyuni just means quickly or swiftly. Hara, this is the belly, the stomach, the womb. So their stomach, hara o. So doing something to the stomach, osaete. And we can see here this means to kind of pin down, to hold down, or even to press a part of their body. And that's exactly what she's doing, right? She's pressing her stomach. Hara o osaete. She's pressing her stomach and kurushimi dashite. Kurushimi is to be in pain, and then dasu is actually to begin to do something, so to begin to be in pain. So from just a little while ago, all of a sudden she's been in pain and she's been holding her stomach.
つい先ほどから急に腹を押さえて苦しみ出して。
こりゃいかん。盲腸かもしれんちや。
And then the doctor says, Korea ikan. Korea is pretty simple. This is just short for kore wa. It's like a colloquial way of saying it. The kore wa, the re and the wa kind of bleed together into a rya. Korea, kore wa. Ikan means not good. As we can see, it's not going well, bad, good, hopeless beyond hope. And this is also connected to ikenai. But here it's very much meaning kind of like yokunai. It's not good. Korea ikan is the same thing as saying kore wa yokunai. This isn't very good. Ah, and the next word explains exactly why it's not good. Mocho is the word for appendicitis in Japanese. Funnily enough, the literal translation would be a blind gut. Don't really know what that's referring to. Normally guts can't actually see, but just mocho for appendicitis. So mocho kamoshirencha. Kamoshiren is just a more casual way of saying kamoshirenai. The n is like the abbreviated version of nai, kamoshirenai, kamoshiren. And then we have another piece of dialect here with chia. And so once again, if you just type this in with Hogen for dialect, you'll be able to find some sort of resource that helps explain it. Like here we can see that chia is actually Tosa ben for daio, and we can see it's used when you're kind of adding emphasis to something. And actually the example sentence they give is ikancha is the same as yokunai daio. So, korea ikan, mocho kamoshirencha. This is no good. It may be appendicitis.
こりゃいかん。盲腸かもしれんちや。
盲腸？
腹の腑が炎症を起こす病気じゃ。乱歩医しか治せん代物じゃ。
The woman's surprised by that response. She says, mocho, so appendicitis, and then he continues on and says, hara no fu ga ensho o okosu byoki ja. So we already know hara is for your stomach, but hara no fu, this is definitely a new piece of language for an internal organ like your gut. So like the internal organs of your stomach, or, you know, the gut in your stomach, that type of thing. Hara no fu ga. So the internal organs of your stomach did something. Ensho. A very useful piece of language if you're ever planning on going to the doctor in Japan. This is the word for an inflammation, a very common piece of language. We can see here that it's ranked around about the top 10,000. And yeah, that's true. It's not necessarily like a daily piece of language, but if you go to the doctors, this is a very, very important piece of language. So ensho here is the inflammation. Ensho or kosu, this is an N1 piece of language to cause, to bring about. What's being brought about is marked with that o particle, an inflammation in the gut in your stomach. And this is all modifying the word byoki for a sickness. And then ja, again the old man way of speaking for da. So it's a sickness that causes inflammation in the gut in your stomach. And then the second line, ranpoi shika naosen shiromono ja. Definitely some tricky language in this sentence. So this word highlighted in green, ranpoi, as we can see is meaning a doctor that practices Western medicine, and this is a term that was used during the Edo era, which is exactly where we are right now in this game. So it's kind of a historical term that talks about Western medicine, right? So a doctor that uses Western medicine. Ranpoi shika, when you see shika like this, you know there's going to be a nai form verb, which means nothing but, or only, and there it is, naosen, which is just the contracted version of naosenai, which is the potential negative of to cure or to heal. So naosenai means that you're not able to heal. But it's used with the shika, that means nothing but. Nothing but Western medicine can heal it, right? That's kind of the way of looking at it. So only these ranpoi can heal it. And this final word is a bit of a tricky one. Actually, they didn't really mention this at all in the English translation of the game because it's a bit difficult to translate. Shiromono is kind of used to talk about almost like a rare, valuable thing. As we can see in definition number 2, like a fine thing. But you can also see that it's often used to appraise something, especially in an ironic way. So it's kind of like calling something this, rare thing, this in a way fine thing, but you're actually being ironic. It's actually not a good thing at all. And there's some other definitions as well. So here he's saying that kind of this is a rare thing that can only be cured by Western doctors. Which is quite true. Appendicitis was a very, very big issue for a lot of people back in the day. Nowadays we can just get it fixed very quickly.
盲腸？
腹の腑が炎症を起こす病気じゃ。乱歩医しか治せん代物じゃ。
Sonna. So this means that kind of thing, such a thing. But here it's being more used in definition number 2 as kind of like a no way. Literally should be saying such a thing. But the meaning is more just saying no way, as if she's expressing disbelief.
そんな。
とにかく急いで運ぶがぜよ。
Tonikaku, isoide, hakubu gazeo. Tonikaku means at any rate, so, regardless of the fact, at any rate, isoide, in a hurry, hakobu, and this means to carry. So at any rate, hurry up and carry her. And then he finishes off again with this tosa ben, gazeo. As we've seen, the ga is kind of like being interrogative at the end of the sentence, perhaps similar to n, and then zeo is just daio. So you could perhaps look at this in standard Japanese as isoide, hakobun daio. It is that you need to hurry up and carry her.
とにかく急いで運ぶがぜよ。おい、誰かこの子を運ぶの手伝ってくれんか。
Oi, hey, 誰か somebody この子を So this child, and we're doing something to this child with the o particle. Hakobu no o. So hakobu is to carry, no is like possessive, and then o again we're doing something to it. So doing something to the thing of carrying this child. Tetsudaote kurenka. Now we've already seen this verb tetsudao to help quite a lot, but here the conjugation is a bit odd. Instead of tetsudate kurenka, it's tetsudote kurenka. And this is actually a little bit more of an older way of speaking. You can see this still today in Kansai dialect as well. Rather than using that small tsu with the te form for certain verbs, instead of that small tsu, it's just an u. So like for example, kao, to buy, instead of katta, it's kota. So here instead of tetsudate, it's tetsudote. And then te kuren is te kurenai, won't you do it? So won't someone please help us carry this child?
おい、誰かこの子を運ぶの手伝ってくれんか。
上司様じゃ。
As Ryoma walks down the street, someone screams out, "Joshi-sama ja!" Now, a joshi here is a really important piece of language looking at like the historical context of the samurai class. Most people who think of samurai, especially in the kind of, movies and things like that, think of this kind of wandering lone samurai. But actually in Japan, there was actually a class system. There was kind of the upper samurai and the lower samurai, and their difference in life was incredibly different. Completely different. It was so ridiculously different and unfair and imbalanced, the actual system itself. That's actually what led to the revolution where samurai themselves were overturning the kind of samurai system in Japan. So samurai is not just one blanket term for all of the people who walk around with a sword. There is definitely a ranking system and a kind of hierarchy, a class system. And here the joshi, the jo is for upper and shi here is for that sort of warrior or samurai. So a joshi is someone who is at the very highest ranking in the samurai class system. Here, a retainer of a daimyo, and a daimyo is kind of like the leader of a certain area in Japan, and the joshi are kind of the warriors for that daimyo. Sama, just showing respect to those joshi, and then ja, da. So, it's the joshi! Interestingly enough, joshi is also a word used nowadays for someone's boss, like a boss at work. So you can kind of think of it in this way, the connection, right? Here it's a different kanji and it's a different word altogether, but there is a connection here with the kind of superior, joshi.
上司様じゃ。
来ない時になんちゅうことぜよ。
So as you saw the Joshi walking down the street looking very, very kind of arrogant and very, very confident, right? And everyone's kind of bowing down to them, right? They actually had to do this, actually bow down to the Joshi whenever they'd walk past. And so here the doctor says, Konai toki ni. Konnai is just Kansai Ben for konna, so like this. Konnai toki, so a time like this, ni, at a time like this. Nanchu koto, nanchu is just the same as nantoiyu, but again in Kansai Western dialect. And the thing about Kansai dialect is it does actually come from this more samurai era, the olden era. So in these kind of more Edo era movies and anime and drama and things like that, you'll actually see Kansai Ben used quite a lot because for a very long time everything was based in Kyoto. That was actually the old capital before it moved to Edo, and they kept a lot of the language traditions still today in Kansai dialect, so you'll often see a connection here as well with kind of just olden days speech as well. That's why Kansai dialect is one of the most kind of enjoyable and useful dialects to actually learn, because you can use it in lots of different situations, not necessarily just for being in Kyoto or Osaka. Right now we're in Tosa, but still the same language is being used. Nanchu, nantoyu koto, so nantoyu koto, what kind of thing, and then again, zeo, dayo. So, oh, what kind of thing to come at a time like this?
来ない時になんちゅうことぜよ。
Otsu, daijoubu kai? So Otsu is the name of the girl, daijoubu just means to be okay, and then kai is like a rough way of asking a question, like a yes or no. So Otsu, are you okay? Otsu!
ちょおまん、何をする気ぜよ。
ちょ、おまん、何をする気ぜよ。ちょ is like chotto, so like hang on. Oman we know means anata or omae, so a way of referring to you. So hang on, you. Nani o suruki zeo. So nani o suruki just means what do you intend on doing? Zeo, daio. So hey you, what do you intend on doing?
ちょおまん、何をする気ぜよ。待て。
Mate, wait. So mate is just the imperative form of matsu. So he's telling her to wait.
待て。女。どこへ行く気ぜよ。
Onna is just the word for a woman. Doko e ikuki zeo. So doko, where. E is to, so the direction. To where. Ikuki, intending on going, and then zeo, daio. So hey, where do you think you're going? Where are you intending on going? That type of thing.
女。どこへ行く気ぜよ。
この子が腹の腑の病気に。
この子が腹の腑の病気に。So we actually know all of the language in this sentence so far. この子, this child, が, so this child's the subject of the sentence. 腹の腑, so the organs, the internal gut of the stomach. No byoki ni. So this child is kind of suffering, that part's kind of omitted, suffering by a sickness in the gut in her stomach.
この子が腹の腑の病気に。
おお、それで。
He seems rather concerned for her well-being. He says, "Ho, それで." Ho is like oh, それで. And, so oh, and what? So what? That type of thing. So he's definitely not that concerned for her well-being. Ho, それで.
Oh, それで.
今すぐ乱暴医のところへ行かないと手遅れに。
Awesome, and another sentence we've actually seen all of this language previously if you watch every video in this playlist. 今すぐ, right away, 乱暴医, so the Western doctor, のところへ, so this is to the place of, 乱暴医のところ, the place of the Western doctor, へ, to that place, 行かないと, this means literally if I don't go. Now you often also see this translated as kind of I must go, but really it's just implying that if I don't go, something bad's going to happen. So if I don't go, then 手遅れに, I'll be too late. And perhaps after this last ni particle, it might be like ni nachao, like to regretfully turn into, right? But she's just finishing a sentence there, she's not completing it. But it's pretty obvious what she's saying. If she doesn't go immediately to the doctor's place, she may be too late.
今すぐランポインのところへ行かないと手遅れに。ですから、ここをお通しくださいませ。
ですから、ここをお通しくださいませ。And we actually know all of this language as well. ですから、that's why, ここを, so here, お通しくださいませ. Now, 通す is just to go through, but here she's being very, very polite. She says, お通しください. So please let us pass. But she finishes off with this ませ. Now, this is actually the imperative form of must. So this is almost like a polite imperative. Now, you know, normally you're not being super strong when you're speaking politely, and actually you see this in all kinds of words like irashaimase and things like that. But mase here is actually requesting something. It's asking the person to do something in a polite way. So here, please let us through.
ですから、ここをお通しくださいませ。
そら大変な話ぜよ。なあ。
More language that we've already seen. Sorea, that's sore wa. Taihen na hanashi. Taihen just means terrible. Hanashi is like a story, so that's a terrible story. Zeo, dayo. So, oh, that's a terrible story. Na, right. As he kind of looks to his partner for kind of confirmation. Whoa, that's a terrible story, huh?
そら大変な話ぜよ。なあ。おお、大変じゃ。
Oh, yeah. 大変じゃ. Yeah, it's pretty serious.
おお、大変じゃ。腹の腑の病気か何か知らんが。
And definitely not a nice guy here as he slaps her and he says, 腹の腑の病気か何か知らんが. Once again, language we've already seen in previous videos. 腹の腑, the gut in your stomach. の病気か. This is kind of like whether it's a sickness of your stomach. 何か知らんが. 何か means what? 知らん, I don't know, or even I don't care, and then ga, however. So I don't know if it's a sickness of the stomach or whatever. Or even I don't care if it's a sickness of the stomach or whatever. He continues on and he says, 手遅れになったらなったで. Now, this is actually a little bit tricky grammar being used right here. So, 手遅れに, we know that just means to be late. Ni naru, so that's exactly the verb that was missing from the previous sentence because we can see it being used right here. This means to become. But it's connected in this interesting phrase, ni nattara, natta de. Literally, this is pretty difficult to break down because ni nattara, if it becomes, natta de, as it became, it doesn't really work. This is where Japanese definitions really help. So this is an N1 piece of grammar and we can see tara, dun dun dun, ta de. With the same verb being used can mean if that's the situation, then of course that's how it should be. So if it becomes too late, then it should be too late. So he's just kind of saying, look, yeah, if she's gonna die, she's gonna die. If it's too late, it's too late. That's it.
腹の腑の病気か何か知らんが、手遅れになったらなったで。それがその子供の寿命っちゅうことぜ。
それがその子供の寿命ちゅうことぜ。So それが that is what is その子供の that child's 寿命. And this is an N2 piece of language to mean the lifespan. So saying, you know, look, hey, if it's the case that you're going to be late, then you're going to be late. And it just means that's what the child's lifespan was. Chu koto just means toyu koto, explaining that's how it is. So hey, you know, if you're too late, then all that means is that's all she was going to live for anyway. So jumyo here is expressing that lifespan.
腹の腑の病気か何か知らんが、手遅れになったらなったで。それがその子供の寿命っちゅうことぜ。腹痛程度でずうずうしい女子じゃ。
Quite a bit of new language here, so 腹痛程度で. So the first new piece of vocabulary we have here is fukutsu, and this means a stomach ache. And literally the breakdown of the kanji, fuku we actually already know as hara, but this is a different way of reading it, and then tsu for like itami, some sort of pain, so a pain in your stomach, right? Fukutsu Tedo de. Tedo means like the degree or the amount of something, and then de is with. So to the amount of a stomach ache. And zuzushi here is an N1 piece of language to mean impudent, shameless, brazen. And so here he's saying that, you know, how dare you make such a big deal of just a stomach ache, that type of thing. And this next word that he uses here is usually joshi. However, he uses this dated way of saying it, onago. So this is a dated way of saying a woman or a girl. This isn't something you would use normally. You would sound like a samurai if you use this type of language. Normally you would just say joshi for a girl, but here, onago is what he's saying.
腹痛程度でずうずうしい女子じゃ。わしら上司の横を素通りできると思ったかか。
Washira joshi no yoko o. Washira is just the plural form of washi, which is an old way of referring to oneself. You hear the samurai or just old man way of talking. Washira, us, joshi, so us joshi, us upper class samurai, no yoko o. And yoko is apparently a new piece of language. I don't know how we haven't come across this yet, but yoko just means the side of something, right? Yoko is literally the side. It can also be for things like horizontal, next to, that type of thing. But here, very much kind of side to side, beside. So beside the upper class joshi, sudori dekiru to omotta ga ka. So sudori means to pass through without stopping. She wanted to pass by these joshi without stopping like everyone else was who were bowing down. So without stopping, sudori dekiru, to be able to pass by without stopping. To omota, again, we see that old way of speaking with the omota instead of omotta. The small tsu is replaced with an u in this more archaic way of talking, as well as in Kansai Ben. So this is, you thought that you were able to pass by without stopping, and then ga is used at the end of the sentence in Tosa Ben to be a little bit more interrogative. So is that what it is? Is that how it is? You think you can just pass by us upper class samurai without stopping?
わしら上司の横を素通りできると思ったかか。
そんなに上司様は偉いのですか?
Ooh, and she's being a bit defiant, and she says, そんなに上司様は偉いのですか? So we have one new piece of language in this sentence. First, そんなに, to that extent, or like so. 上司様は, as for the 上司, 偉いのですか? And this is the new word right here, erai. And this is a very, very, very useful piece of language. Even though it's technically at the end too, you can see it's in the top 2.5 thousand words for anime and drama. Incredibly common. And this just means kind of great, excellent, remarkable. It can also be used in the negative as well, like in definition number 2, awful and terrible, but that's not what is being used right here. She's saying, you know, are the joshi really that great? Why is it that there's this clear class divide? Why can they be so high above others? Are the joshi really that great? そんなにjoshi様は偉いのですか?
そんなに上司様は偉いのですか?
Nani?
What? Nani? So like, what did you say? That type of thing.
Nani?
私は大津藩の出です。4年前、この土佐藩の合司のところに嫁ぎました。
Oof, and a huge sentence here. 私は, as for me, Ozu Han is like the Ozu province or the Ozu domain. And as we can see on the map here, it was just kind of to the northwest of Tosa. So this is still on that same island of Shikoku, but that's to the west side. We can see that place called Ozu. And she says, Ozu Han no de. And de is often connected to this kind of going out of something, like deru, for example. But here, with definition number 4, it actually expresses the origins or the background, where someone came from, like a native of. So a native of Ozuhan. So I'm a native of Ozuhan, the place that's right next to Tosa. 4年前, 4 years ago, この土佐藩の合司のところに嫁ぎました. So この土佐藩, this Tosa domain, no goshi. This is a very important word for especially this part of Japanese history. This is the country samurai. If you remember that I said there was kind of like the upper class samurai, well, there are even more like peasant class samurai. It wasn't just one kind of class for a samurai. And here, goshi is actually the samurai that the joshi look down on. Like quite a lot. Like it's a huge class difference. So she's saying, kono Tosa-han no goshi, so the country samurai of this place of Tosa, no tokoro ni, so to that place, totsugimashita. And totsugu here is a word used to kind of marry, particularly of a woman, to kind of marry into a family. So as we can see here, to marry of a woman, to become a bride, to marry in a family, as well as other stuff. So she's saying that she is actually from Ozu, so she's somewhere that's very, very nearby. And 4 years ago, she married into a Goshi family here in Tosa.
私は大津藩の出です。4年前、この土佐藩の合氏のところに嫁ぎました。でも、土佐はおかしい。
Demo, Tosa wa okashi. So demo, however, Tosa wa, as for Tosa, okashi. And this means kind of strange or odd, wrong in a way, kind of unusual, right? So she's saying, but Tosa is strange, Tosa is wrong. There's something wrong with Tosa.
でも、土佐はおかしい。大津なら、武士は人を助け、こういう時には誰よりも親切にしてくれたというのに。
We have a very big sentence here. So, Ozu nara. So, if it's the case that it was in Ozu, bushi wa. Now, bushi is another word for a samurai or a warrior. So here talking about those warriors, the samurais. So, if it's in Ozu, as for the samurai, hito o tasuke. So, hito is people, tasukeru is to save or to help. So, they help people. Koyu toki ni wa. So, as for in times like this, dare yorimo, this means more than anyone else. Shinsetsu ni shite kureta toyu no ni. Now, shinsetsu was a new piece of language at the end for, very, very useful piece of language to mean kind of friendly or kind. Ni shite kureta means they did for me, so they treated me kind. Dare yorimo, more than anyone else. Toyu no ni. And this means despite. So, despite the fact that if we're in Ozu, the samurai help and are nice to people more than anyone else, especially in a time like this.
大津なら、武士は人を助け、こういう時には誰よりも親切にしてくれたというのに、同じ人間なのにどうして？
同じ人間なのにどうして？Onaji, the same, ningen, human, so we're the same human, nanoni, despite, doshite, why? So despite the fact that we're all human, we're the same human beings, why?
同じ人間なのにどうして？上司様のお通りは？
上司様のお通りは、so 上司様, the 上司のお通り. And tori here can be used to mean the coming and going of something. It can also just be used for things like street traffic, as well as even the word for like a street itself, often combined with the word that comes before it and is read as dori, but it's still the same word. So here, the coming and going of these joshi wa, as for that,
上司様のお通りは、この子の命より重いんですか？
この子, this child's, no inochi, this child's life, yori, more than, omoin desu ka? And omoi is often seen meaning heavy or weighty, but in this situation it's very much definition number 4, which means important, like an important position. So here she's talking about the joshi from the previous statement that she had that was unfinished. So as for the joshi's coming and going, is it more important than yori, than this child's life? So is the coming and going of Joshi more important than this child's life?
上司様のお通りは、この子の命より重いんですか？
合氏の嫁風情が何を抜かす。
Well, he certainly doesn't seem to be swayed by her emotion-filled words. And here he replies with, Goshi no yome fuze ga nani o nukasu. So we know Goshi here means the country's samurai. No yome, this is a word for a wife. And she just said that she married into the family of a Goshi samurai. So here she's saying Goshi no yome, the wife of a Goshi country samurai, fuze ga. Now, fuze here is definitely definition number 3, speaking very much down to her, this kind of derogatory language, the likes of, or lowly people such as. So, you know, peasants such as the wives of country samurai. Goshi no yome fuze ga nani o nukasu. And nani just means what. Nani or what are you? Nukasu, to speak. But this is a very vulgar way to say speak. Normally you would just use EU to say something, but here it's vulgar, like kind of almost to let out, right? You kind of spitting, for the lack of better words, kind of, you know, talking crap, that type of thing. You often see that, right, with nukasu, to kind of speak something in a very vulgar way. So, you know, here he's saying, what the hell is the likes of a country samurai's wife talking about?
Goshi no yome fuze ga nani o nukasu. So ja. Tosa de wa joushi ga zettai.
And again, language we already know now, so soja, soda. That's right. Tosa de wa, so as for at Tosa, joushi ga, so the joushi are zettai, absolute. So yeah, that's right. Here in Tosa, the joushi are absolute.
So ja. Tosa de wa joushi ga zettai. Washira ni sakarau koto nado yurusarenno ja!
Oh, he definitely doesn't seem to be taking kindly to her talking back at him, and he says, Washira ni sakarau koto nado yurusarenno ja. So we only have one new piece of language in this sentence. First we have washira ni, so to us. Remember, ni is showing the direction of action. And what action is happening here? Sakarao. And this is the new piece of language in this sentence. So this is to oppose, to go against. Go against who? Well, direction of action is marked by the ni particle, going against us. Washira ni sakarao koto nado. So things like defying us, yurusarenno ja. So yurusaren, yurusarenai, it's unforgivable, and then noja is the same as noda, the explanatory particle. So he's saying it's unforgivable, such a thing as to oppose us.
Washira ni sakarau koto nado yurusarenno ja!
There we go, Ryoma's standing up for her, and he says, Taku, Tosa wa ichi ore o iradataseru. So, Taku is like, geez. Tosa wa, as for Tosa, ichi, this is kind of like fully doing something, right? So, ichi ore o, completely to me, iradataseru. So, iradatsu here means to get irritated by something, but we can see that it's in the causative form, to make me get irritated, or to make me lose my patience. So he's like, geez, Tosa really completely gets on my nerves. As we saw by punching the guy that no one's supposed to oppose.
Tosa, ichiichi ore o iradataseru.
Nanimono zeo onshi. So, nanimono, this just means who are you? Like, nanimono da. But here, nanimono dayo. Who the hell are you? Nanimono zeo. And then onshi is another piece of Tosa ben here, and this is very much omae. So you, talking to someone a little bit more rudely. So, who the hell are you? That type of thing. Nanimono zeo onshi. So we're gonna be Tosa ben masters by the end of this video.
Nanimono zeo onshi!
Tosahan Goshi, Sakamoto Ryoma.
And I actually think we know all of this language, or most of this language. We have Tosahan Goshi, Sakamoto Ryoma. And so we know most of this language. Tosa is the Tosa region, but we have Tosa Han. Now, Han here, as we can see in the definition, the estate of a daimyo in the Edo and early Meiji periods. This is kind of like the area, the feudal domain, that type of thing. I actually said province previously, that's another way of looking at it. And so this is very much kind of like, before we had things like ken, right, a prefecture in Japan, we had these Han, and that's kind of a more, the area of daimyo control. So here, Tosa Han, the area of Tosa Goshi, the country samurai. So he says, I'm a country samurai of the province of Tosa, Sakamoto Ryoma.
Tosahan Goshi, Sakamoto Ryoma.
Goshi jato? Goshi no bunzai de onsha!
Goshi jato. So Goshi, the country samurai, and then we have jato, and this is just the same as dato, right? So that ja is replacing pretty much every use of da, right? So dato, you said, You say you're a country samurai? Goshi no bunzai de onsha! So goshi no bunzai. Bunzai is like a social standing, but we can see here that it's used in kind of like a scornful way. So, you know, someone whose position is the lowly country samurai. Goshi no bunzai de onsha! And remember, that's omae. So, you call yourself a country samurai? Someone in your social standing? Omae! You!
Goshi じゃと? Goshi no bunzai de onsha!
早く行け。
And we definitely know all of this language. Hayaku just means quickly. Ike means to go, imperative. So quickly, go.
早く行け。
しかし。
しかし、but.
しかし。
俺は根っからの土佐人だ。上司連中の少年は知り尽くしている。
俺は、as for me, 根っからの. This is a bit more of a rarer way to say through and through, absolutely, like by nature. So I am kind of completely, I'm through and through Tosa nin. So here is a person of Tosa. Duh, I am. I'm completely a person of Tosa. So, you know, he's homebred, raised in Tosa. Joshi renchu no shone wa shiritsukushiteiru. So Joshi Renshu, Renshu is just like the company, those guys, so these Joshi guys, no shone wa. Now shone here is a word for a nature or a character, some sort of disposition, and it is relatively rare here in the top 23,000, so not as common. There is definitely more common ways of saying this, but here he's saying that the disposition, that's a little bit more of a rarer way of saying nature, right? The disposition of those people in Tosa, the disposition of those guys who are Joshi, wa shiritsukushiteiru. And shiritsukusu here means to have full knowledge, to know something very well, thoroughly. So I am a person of Tosa to my core, and I know very well the disposition of those Joshi guys.
俺は根っからの土佐人だ。上司連中の少年は知り尽くしている。こいつらにはいくら道理を解いても通用しない。
こいつらには。こいつら is like a derogatory way of saying these guys. So as for these guys, こいつらにはいくら道理を解いても tsuyo shinai. So this second sentence does have some pieces of language that are a little bit more difficult. So first we have an N3 piece of grammar, ikura temo. And as we can see in the Japanese definition, it says that kind of no matter how much or to how much extent something becomes a certain way, there is no influence or effect. So this means no matter how much you do something, it's not going to change anything, right? So ikura dori o toite mo, no matter how much you dori o toku, dori is reason or logic or kind of sense of something. Dori o toku, this means to explain. So no matter how much you explain logic or sense or reason, ikura dori o toite mo tsuyo shinai. And tsuyo here in the kind of second definition is to be accepted, like a way of thinking, or for something to kind of pass, to get through. So very much saying, look, no matter how much you explain reason to these guys, they won't get it.
こいつらにはいくら道理を解いても通用しない。
んしゃー。
こうするしかねえんだよ。その子の命を助けたいのならな。
Wow, and we actually know all of the language in both of these sentences. So the first one, こうするしかねえんだよ. So, こうする, to do in this way. Remember, he just punched one of the Joshi, right? So to do it in this way. こうするしかねえ. We've seen this in this episode already. しかない. Nothing but. んだよ. Explaining. So he's saying, there's no other choice but to do it like this. こうするしかねえんだよ. その子の命を助けたいのならな. So, その子の命, we know means that child's life. を助けたい, to want to save. And then, no nara na. So, nara is if it's the case. So, if it's the case that you want to save that child's life. And then, na is more of this masculine ne. So, I had no choice but to do it like this. That is, if you want to save this child's life.
こうするしかねえんだよ。その子の命を助けたいのならな。
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。
ご神ごときがどうなるか分かっちゅうがか。
Goshi gotoki ga. Goshi, the country's samurai. Gotoki, this means the likes of. So the likes of a country samurai. And then we have the ga particle. Now, so we know this is the subject marker, so he's doing some sort of action. What action isn't clearly stated, but it's clear that he's saying something like the likes of a country samurai to do a thing like this. But he's just not saying the rest of that sentence. And the reason why we know this is because the ga particle always marks who is doing the action in the sentence, even if the action here isn't apparent. He's doing some action, which is probably what he just did, punching people, right? Do naru ka wakachu ga ka? So do naru is just how it will become, and then ka a question. So how it's going to become wakachu ga ka? So wakachu is actually Tosa ben for wakateiru. Do you understand, right? So do you understand what's gonna happen to you? The likes of a country samurai.
更新ごときがどうなるか分かっちゅうがか。
ああ。上司様に刃を向けたりはしねえ。間違って殺してもしたら。
Interesting, we know all the language in this episode thanks to especially some of the previous episodes that really had some of this language with swords and stuff like this. So, Joshi-sama ni, to the Joshi, yaiba o muketari. So, yaiba is a sword, and then mukeru is to face, to kind of turn to. So, to kind of face swords against the ni particle, again, showing that direction of action. Against the Joshi, muketari wa shine. And this is the same as muketari wa shinai. Tari just means to do things like. And it's always followed with suru at the end. So I won't do things such as, you know, facing my blade against the Joshi. Machigatte koroshi demo shitara. So machigatte means to make some sort of mistake. Koroshi demo shitara. Koroshi means to kill. Demo is even things like that. Shitara, if I did. So even if I killed someone by mistake...
上司様に刃を向けたりはしねえ。間違って殺してもしたら、仕返しにこの町ごと焼き払われかねないからな。
Ooh, we have a few new pieces of language in this sentence. So, 仕返しにこの町ごと焼き払われかねないからな。So first up, shikaeshi here is to kind of get payback, retaliation or revenge, right? So this is retaliation or revenge for if he accidentally cut down a joshi. Shikaeshi ni, so coming to do that action. Kono machi, this town, goto, and this is like each or every, so each one of these towns, yaki haraware, this is the passive form of yaki harao, and this just means to burn down, to clear away by burning something, right? Yaki means the burning, and harao is almost like to clear away, so that's how the combination of yaki harao means to just burn down to ashes. And then an N2 piece of grammar here, kanenai. This means it's quite capable of, or something could happen. Literally, it's not unlikely to, but that's kind of almost a double negative, so it might be easier to just look at it as it could happen. So it could be burnt down, each one of these towns. Karana, because. So I wouldn't fight against a Joshi with a blade, because even if I accidentally killed one, their retaliation would be to burn down all of the villages in the area.
上司様に刃を向けたりはしねえ。間違って殺してもしたら、仕返しにこの町ごと焼き払われかねないからな。
なんじゃと？
なんじゃと? What did you say?
なんじゃと？
後で報いは受けてやる。
Now he's putting up his fist, it looks like he's gonna give him a punch out, and he says, 後で報いは受けてやる. So, atode just means afterwards, and the only new piece of language here is mukui, and this could both be a reward or punishment, and it's very much the second one here. So, afterwards, mukui wa, as for retribution, ukete yaru. Ukeru is to receive, te yaru is to do something, so afterwards I will receive punishment. So he's saying, I'm not going to cut you down, but I am going to beat the hell out of you. And later on you can tell me off.
後で報いは受けてやる。だがお前らにも女を殴った報いを受けさせてやる。
And yet again, incredibly, we know all of this language, so let's just go through it very quickly. Daga, however, omaera ni mo, so also to you guys. Onna o nagutta mukui o. So onna, a woman, or nagutta, to have hit, mukui, retribution, or So retribution for hitting a woman, ukesasete yaru. Very, very cool. I actually really love this line because he says he uses the same verb twice, right? Ukeru is to receive, but now he's saying ukesasete yaru. And saseru is to make you do something. And here, make you receive the punishment for hitting a woman. So a very badass line right here. However, I'll also make you receive punishment for hitting a woman.
後で報いは受けてやる。だがお前らにも女を殴った報いを受けさせてやる。この命知らずが。
This is an interesting piece of language. So, この命知らず. So, この this. Inochi's life, and shirazu means to not know, so it's almost literally would be someone who doesn't know their own life. And that's where the definition here is connected to recklessness, or someone who's very daredevilry, right, that type of thing. Someone who has no concern for their own life, and they do things that are quite risky and dangerous. That's what he's saying here. So, in a way, you damn daredevil! That's a weird translation, you damn daredevil! That's not quite what he's saying. He's just saying, you know, you who have no value for your life, that type of thing, right? You don't even know that you're about to die.
この命知らずがかかってこい。ぬるま湯育ちのお前らに。
So, かかってこい. This just means bring it on. This is something you'll see a lot in almost every single fighting game, right? Bring it on, かかってこい. And then he starts to diss the guy and he says, ぬるま湯育ちのお前らに. So here he's saying, ぬるま湯, this means kind of lukewarm water. 育ち is to be raised. So to be raised in lukewarm water. And I believe that what he's actually using here is definition number 2, where it's to kind of be raised in easy, relaxed environments. Right? They live this kind of comfy, cushy life. They don't know the hardships. The joshi is someone who is the upper class. And so they're very kind of soft in a way. And he's saying, you who was raised in this comfy environment, right? You softy, no omaera ni. So you who was raised in this soft environment.
かかってこい。ぬるま湯育ちのお前らに痛みってもんを教えてやる。
痛みってもんを教えてやる。So, itami, this means pain, and itami te mon, this is a contracted version of toiyu mono. So the thing that is called pain, o oshiete yaru, I'll teach you. So very much like, I will teach you the meaning of pain. Itami te mon o oshiete yaru.
かかってこい。ぬるま湯育ちのお前らに痛みってもんを教えてやる。
Now, just very quickly, as we're beating up these guys, we have two different types of attacks it's asking us to do. With square, do rengeki. This just means continuous attacks. With triangle, triangle de, use dai kogeki. And this just means the big attack. The first kanji represents big, and then kogeki is just for an attack. So you have repetitive attacks with square, and then your big attack with triangle. And then we have the next stage, which is square de. So with the square button, rengeki chu ni. So while you're doing consecutive attacks, triangle de. With the triangle button, dai kogeki. So do your big attack. So this is your combo. As you're spamming square, press triangle and you do a big attack. Oi oi, erai koto zeo. So oi oi is like, hey. Erai koto means a big thing, so some big thing has happened, and then zeo is daio. So whoa, that's a big thing.
Oi oi, erai koto zeo. Honmani yatte shimouta ya, ano nii-chan.
Honmani yatte shimouta ya, ano nii-chan. Honmani is a very useful piece of language, Kansai Ben. This is the replacement for hontoni in Kansai dialect. So you hear this all over the place if you come to Kyoto or Osaka. Honmani, really. Honmani yatte shimota. And this is just yatte shimatta, to regretfully or to completely done some action. So, whoa, he's really done it. And then chia is like dayo. So, whoa, he's really gone and done it. Ano ni-chan, that guy.
ほんまにやってしもうたちやあの兄ちゃん
Hotaena!
Whoa, okay, and he screams at everyone, Hotaena! So, hotaeru here, we can actually see is an archaic piece of language that's used to either say to mess around, to clown around, or to take advantage of a situation and kind of act spoiled. And that's kind of similar to messing around and clowning around, right? So he's like, don't screw around! Hotaena!
Hotaena! 俺だってわかってるさ。
俺だって even me わかってるさ So わかってる I understand, and then sa is like hey, you know. So look, even I know.
俺だってわかってるさ。この土佐で上司に逆らったらどうなるかなんてことは。
Yay, we know all the language in this sentence. So この土佐で here in Tosa 上司に逆らったら if you oppose the 上司どうなるかなんてことは So, do naru, how it will become, nante, such a thing as, and then koto, the thing. So, the thing of how it will turn out. So, in Tosa, if you go against the Joshi, as for how it's going to turn out...
俺だってわかってるさ。この土佐で上司に逆らったらどうなるかなんてことは、ここにいる誰よりずっとな。
ここにいる誰よりずっとな。So, ここにいる the people who are here, 誰より more than anyone, ずっと much, much more. So often we'll see ずっと meaning like for the whole time, but here it's actually definition number 2, much, much more, far and away more. And we know it's being used in this context because there's no time being referred to, and it's 誰より more than anyone else. So he understands more than anyone what will happen if you go against the Joshi.
この土佐で上司に逆らったらどうなるかなんてことは、ここにいる誰よりずっとな。何事だ!
何事だ! So what's going on over there? And as we can see, it's kind of almost like police are coming running down the street in kind of groups. Actually, these guys look exactly the same as the police group guys that you saw in the same era with Rurouni Kenshin, right? This is set smack bang right in that same era. Probably one of the most interesting parts of the actual kind of samurai history is the end, because it has this period of so much change, and it's just so much people fighting for and against, and so much interest and variety. It really is an interesting time, and I understand why so much anime and drama and just media is based in this era. One of my personal favorite TV shows, Musashi, it's a taiga drama in Japanese, and it's based on the life of Miyamoto Musashi, which is another really important figure in Japanese kind of historical sense. It's at least for samurai, right? That type of thing. You've probably already heard of him. Most people have heard of Musashi somewhere, but he's very much in this kind of era as well. And he's dead. No. But I am going to have to stop it there. This has already been a very big vocab episode. I think I've been recording this. I've just been recording this in a new style as I actually edit. And I think I have close to 10 hours of footage that I'm going to have to edit through in order to make this video. So a lot of work goes into this video. So if you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know that you're enjoying the video. Let me know if there's any games you want to see covered in this style. And if you really love what I'm doing with this channel, trying to help learning Japanese a little bit more enjoyable and fun, then consider joining us on the Game Gengo Discord community. Come say hi, make some friends, and help learn Japanese. Both me and my wife are there all the time, so you can get help with Japanese questions, just hang out, you can get kind of private streams, all kinds of different stuff. Check the Game Gengo website if you want to see all the cool things about the Discord community. And you can also join us through Patreon as well. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. I'm now going to play the entire thing that we've just gone through as a kind of movie, so you can use this as immersion, so you can test yourself and see how much you actually remember, how much you've learnt. And this is a tricky one today, as we have a lot of dialectal language, so definitely going to be useful to actually have a re-listen of the whole thing. So good luck, everyone. Hope you guys enjoy, and as always, I'll see you again in the next video. See ya.
行くで。暴れがいがあるってもんやで。余計なおしゃべりは真面目にやれ。
ここは私たちに任せて君も行け。
坂本龍馬は上の階や。
始まったか。
ええ。
誰ぜよ。おまんは
不思議な話もあったもんやな。時代を動かすはずの男が時代遅れの男に切られ死ぬ。しかもこの世に存在しないはずのもう一人の自分に切られることになるんやからな。なあ、坂本龍馬さんよ。
維新の英雄坂本龍馬の暗殺よりわずか数年前、この国は徳川幕府による絶対的な支配が300年にわたって続いていた。だが静寂は突如現れた異国の黒船によって打ち破られる。強大な文明力を持った異国に対し幕府は抗う術を持たなかったのである。その支配者の衰えを時の侍たちが黙って見逃すはずがなかった。無力な支配者に従う理由はない。日本は再び群雄割拠の乱世に飲み込まれようとしていた。
1年ぶりの土佐だ。みんな元気にしてるだろうか。ちょっと街の様子でも見に行くか。
いやー、絶景じゃのう。そういや、
坂本さん、こんにちは。
わしらは黙ってお国のために働くだけ。昨日はこじゃんと
そうやろ。
よいしょよいしょよいしょよいしょよいしょ。
おつどうしたの？おつ誰かお医者様はいませんか？
どういたがぜよ。わしは医者じゃ。見してみ。
つい先ほどから急に腹を押さえて苦しみ出して。
こりゃいかん。盲腸かもしれんちや。
盲腸？
腹の腑が炎症を起こす病気じゃ。乱歩医しか治せん代物じゃ。
そんな。
とにかく急いで運ぶがぜよ。おい、誰かこの子を運ぶの手伝ってくれんか。
上司様じゃ。何や上司様、はよよけや。
来ない時になんちゅうことぜよ。
おつ大丈夫かい？おつ
長万、何をする気ぜよ。 待て、女、どこへ行く気ぜよ。
この子が腹の腑の病気に。
おお、それで
今すぐ乱歩医のところへ行かないと手遅れに。ですからここをお通しくださいませ。
そら大変な話ぜよなあ。おお、大変じゃ。腹の腑の病気か何か知らんが、手遅れになったらなったで、それがその子供の寿命っちゅうことぜ。腹痛程度でずうずうしい女子じゃ。わしら上司の横を素通りできると思うたかか。
そんなに上司様は偉いのですか？
何？
私は大津藩の出です。4年前この土佐藩の郷士のところに嫁ぎました。でも土佐はおかしい。大津なら武士は人を助け、こういう時には誰よりも親切にしてくれたというのに、同じ人間なのにどうして。女子様のお通りはこの子の命より重いんですか？
郷士の嫁風情が何を抜かす。そうじゃ、土佐では上司が絶対。わしらに逆らうことなど許されんのじゃ。
たく土佐はいちいち俺を苛立たせる。
何者ぜよ恩師。
土佐藩合司坂本龍馬。
合司じゃと。合司の分際で恩赦。
早く行け。
しかし
俺は根っからの土佐人だ。上司連中の少年は知り尽くしている。こいつらにはいくら道理を解いても通用しない。
恩赦。
こうするしかねえんだよ。その子の命を助けたいのならな。
ありがとうございます。
合司ごときがどうなるか分かっちゅうがか。
ああ。上司様に刃を向けたりはしねえ。間違って殺してもしたら仕返しにこの町ごと焼き払われかねないからな。
なんじゃと。
後で報いは受けてやる。だがお前らにも女を殴った報いを受けさせてやる。
この命知らずが。
かかってこい。ぬるま湯育ちのお前らに痛みってもんを教えてやる。
おいおい、えらいことぜよ。ほんまにやってしもうたちや、あの兄ちゃん。
答えな。俺だって分かってるさ。この土佐で上司に逆らったらどうなるかなんてことはここにいる誰よりずっとな。
何事だ。